Hey everybody. Looks like we're going to be doing books like this for a while, but I have a favorite of mine, Sam Johnson and the Blue Ribbon Quilt. One of my absolute favorite books because it takes a story that we think we know and turns it around a little bit and maybe makes us all think about the choices we make to include or exclude people. Sam Johnson and the Blue Ribbon Quilt by Lisa Campbell Ernst. Sam Johnson discovered an awning torn over the pig pen one morning while his wife was out of town. That evening he settled down to mend the tear himself, taking the pieces of cloth from Mrs. Johnson's scrap bag to patch the hole. At first, just running the needle in and out of the fabric was hard work, but as the evening wore on, Sam became more of an expert. Soon he was having a fine time, choosing patches of different shapes and colors. It was sunrise before he leaned back to admire the night's work. "What a masterpiece," he exclaimed, turning the design about. "Just wait till Sarah sees this. She'll be mighty impressed." By the time Mrs. Johnson returned that afternoon, Sam was waiting for her on the porch. "That's very nice, dear," she said, giving his handiwork a quick glance. "I'm glad to see you kept yourself busy while I was away." "But Sarah, don't you think it's beautiful?" Sam protested. When Mrs. Johnson didn't answer, Sam went on, "I had so much fun doing it that I decided to join your quilting club." "Now, Sam, dear," Mrs. Johnson chuckled nervously, "it's very nice that you enjoyed your little project while I was away. But my quilting club? Don't get carried away. That's no place for a man to be. Why, sewing is women's work." But Mrs. Johnson wasn't laughing the next night as she and Sam rode together to the weekly meeting of the Rosedale Women's Quilting Club. Nor did she crack a smile when they walked through the meeting room doors and all the ladies turned to stare. Sam cleared his throat. "Good evening," he said calmly. "I've come to join your club." After a few seconds, a small snicker was heard. Then another, then another. Soon everyone in the whole room was laughing. Everyone, that is, but Sam. "Don't be silly," said the club president. "We can't have a man here bungling up everything. Our most important quilt of the year is coming up the one for the county fair contest. Why don't you go join the men's horseshoe or checker club if you want something to do with your time?" Sam stalked out of the room. "Equal rights for men. Meeting tonight, Sam Johnson's barn, 7 o'clock. The next morning, hastily hung posters were scattered all around the county. Sam's speech that evening was a rousing one. "Men," he began, "we have a very serious problem on our hands." He described what happened to the awning, waving it high for all to see. Then what happened at the quilting club meeting. He talked about freedom and the country and even about the Declaration of Independence. Finally, he explained about the quilt contest and the county fair. "Are you willing," he said, "to prove these ladies wrong?" The men looked at one another and nodded timidly. "Are you ready?" His voice became louder. "To show that you can do more with your hands than push a plow in a field?" "Yes," answered a few small voices. "Then I say," he finished, "that we should enter the contest ourselves." This time everyone clapped and cheered. The Rosedale Men's Quilting Club had officially begun. The county fair was only a month away, so the men didn't have much time. They met every night in Sam's barn working, awkwardly at first, on their flying geese design. Meanwhile, the women's were hard at work on their sailboat pattern. In the beginning, they thought the men's club was a joke. "Quilting is much too delicate of a job for men," they agreed. Soon, though, there were doubts. "I wonder what their quilt looks like," the women's club president said one evening. "I wonder what colors they're using." No one spoke up, but a hush fell over the room as everyone stitched a bit faster. In their final week, each club worked far into the night, making their stitches small and neat and their seams straight and exact. At dawn, on the day of the contest, the men and the women gently folded their quilts and laid them in the back of their wagons and set out for the fairgrounds. It was cool and clear morning following a night of heavy rain. Each group wrapped tightly its entry in old blankets to protect it from lingering drops. As the wagons passed through the fairground gates, the Rosedale Quilting Clubs paused a moment, looking quite smug, nodded their head in greeting. Just then a huge gust of wind blew up, and both quilts were swept into the air. Each one landed with a light splat in a giant mud puddle. No one could believe what had just happened. All that work, Sam Johnson moaned. All those hours and hours, and now looked ruined. But the women peered at the men's quilt and noticed how beautiful it was, and the men saw for the first time that the women's quilt was quite beautiful too. You really did a wonderful job, they said to each other. Too bad neither one of us will win. Wait, said Sam, as everyone headed back to the wagons. I have an idea. All that morning and afternoon, the Rosedale Men's Quilting Club and the Rosedale Women's Quilting Club worked together. Carefully and delicately, they cut out the unsoiled sections of each quilt. Then they pieced together the unsplattered fabric, and as the sun set, the last stitches were being pulled in to complete their amazing design. The fair was a great success. Elijah Poole's hog tipped the scales at a record weight. Harriet Almond's apple raisin pie swept every bacon prize. And as for the quilting contest, the first prize was awarded to just the plain Rosedale Quilting Club. What's the name of your unusual design? Sam Johnson was asked. He paused for a moment, thinking, and replied, Why, the flying sailboats, of course. Sam Johnson and the Blue Ribbon Quilt. I love this book because nobody expects that the men wouldn't be allowed to do something. So something to think about. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You can do it if you want to. See you later, guys.